Let's learn how to build our very first open class car based on the FMA chassis. I'm going to show you step by step what you need to do to build your very first open class car based on the FMA chassis. And the reason why I chose the FMA chassis is because it's probably one of the easier chassis to work with in terms of tune class and your very first open class car. Now, a lot of people love the MS chassis because you can create suspensions with the MS chassis. But for the rank beginner, someone who's never built an MS suspension chassis car before, it's going to be a very daunting experience. And so the best thing to do is just start with what you know. So what I want you to do is think about an open class car as if it is a tune class car plus. So by that I mean, what can you do to a typical tune class car? And this is, most of you know, this is not just a typical tune class car. It's a pretty fast car. And on the right track, it really is fast. So you have to basically figure out what works for you in your tune class cars and then add on top of it. That's how you can get into open class very easily and quickly. So a lot of people start building their open class cars by reading all these magazines, learning all these latest techniques, and then they try to build all the little gimmicks that are in the front and the rear and the body dampers. And then they end up being frustrated because their car doesn't quite work out the way they want it to, even though they've invested all this time into their open class cars. They get frustrated and then they stop making open class cars for a while. And that's a shame because it shouldn't be that way. What you should always think about when you're creating an open class car is, what do I need to do to take my tune class cars to the next level? So if you were to say to yourself, okay, this car works on a certain track really well. Well, on that same track, what can I do to my tune class car to make it even better? If I added a body damper to it, would it make my car faster? If I added maybe a rear pivoting system or a front pivoting system, would it be faster on that track? What would it do? How would it behave on that very same track that you already know that your tune class car would basically negotiate very well? So once you start off with a simple platform like the FMA, and I'm not trying to downplay the FMA chassis. The FMA chassis is very formidable. In fact, a lot of tune class cars, a lot of winners, podium winners on tune class, make FMA cars. And so you'll see a lot of mock frames there. And if you don't like mock frames for whatever reason, then you can go with a VZ chassis, or you can go with something that's a little more classic, like this SX chassis here. Pretty cool, with a wider wheelbase. This is a lot more stable than a lot of cars that are out there. However, each car, each chassis has its advantages and disadvantages. And you have to look at those little charts that talk about acceleration, cornering speed, things like that, and try to figure out what car might be best for the track that you're racing on. Now, every track is going to have obstacles in it. And depending on the obstacles you have to negotiate, whether they be jumps or lots of crazy turns or digital curves, dragon backs, things like that, you have to be ready for every one of those different possibilities, those different obstacles. So racing a few cars on that track to begin with, just to get an idea of what that track is like, that is going to be paramount to your success on that track. So you need time. That's what you really need. If you had a large amount of time before every track, of course you can figure it out. Of course you can then race your fastest and most stable car on that track. If you have very little time, if you come to your races late and you just have like a few minutes to spare to try to figure out the layout of the track, you're probably not going to do as well. So that's my greatest advice. Come to a track early, play test it, see what you can do to win on that particular track. So just because you have a lot of time doesn't mean that you're always going to win. So just be mindful of that. Remember that playtesting a track in practice is always going to be different than racing in a real event. It always happens. Every race has something different about it. When you're racing against opponents, opponents might have heavier cars, they might have lighter cars, and depending on how the track course layout is, vibration control, things like that, that's going to determine who the winner is in many cases, especially on plastic tracks. So, taking a look at these two very formidable cars right here. This is an FMA car. This achieved the second fastest speed on the league racing at Hobbytown, and it's very formidable. The fact that I used a Hyperdash motor in basically a Toon Class car, it's like very formidable in terms of its speed. And the only car that has beaten it so far is an Open Class car. Yeah, so that should tell you how fast this car is. This car here is also very fast, but it needs the right track so that it can be stable, solid, and fast. So this is still in experimental mode. I'm still working out the kinks of it. So yeah, it's not going to be great for every track. So let's take a look at my Open Class car for a little bit, and you can see the difference between what is required for Open Class versus Toon Class. So let's take a look here. Toon Class. So Toon Class right here. You notice it's a much more substantial car. It's heavier. It is more solid. In a sense, it might even be more stable, right? Because of all the excess damper weights. This is definitely heavier than this one. This one's going to be about 140 grams. This one clocks in at 106 grams. So this is very lightweight. And I want you to take a note of the fact that, whoa, 106 versus 140, that's a huge difference. That's a lot of damper weights. That's a lot of excess weight that enables this to be stable, strong, solid. This one is going to be, you're relying on pure speed with this one. You're relying on stability because of the body dampening system. So let's take a look at the body dampening system of this, and you'll see what my design decisions were. So I had play tested this car without this cowl, and it ran pretty good on my home track. And then placing this cowl should not add much additional weight, maybe a couple of grams, right? Maybe a few grams for the body cowl. And I forget, this was already pre-painted for me, and I received it on another Open Class car that didn't fare very well, so I just took it apart and I used this shell. But I think this is one of the Dragon series cars. If it's not a Fire Dragon or fabricated from a Fire Dragon, I don't know. It's from one of those Dragon cars. And I basically mounted it on 2 points right here on this body damping system. This body dampening system is created out of 4 pieces of carbon plates right here. And I'll show you exactly how this is done. So I'm going to remove this from here. So basically I've got these mounting points right here, and they're secured by rubber pipes. And as you see here, this is what a cage of a body dampening system looks like. So I call it a cage. I don't know what exactly it's called, but you see right here, 4 pieces of carbon expertly crafted to look like this and glued together so that's strong and stable and solid. Now, just because you use glue doesn't mean that's going to hold forever and permanently. No. Crashes will affect the look of this cage. So here on the ends of the cage, I have right here some very light dampening weights. They're pancake weights right here with a not so long stem, not so long post on here. And at the ends, I have a green and a purple lock nut to keep it in place. So very nice, very cool, very lightweight. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So let's take a look at what else is on here. This is basically your FMA chassis right here, and I shaved off the ends right here. I shaved off the ends right here so that it will be lighter in weight and it'll be more flexible, so I can then, it's got a lot of twist, as you see there. So what else? On the rear, I've added my katana pivot. Yes. So it's got a little bit of flex right there. So yeah, a little bit of give. You want that little bit of give, especially in the rear. In the front, I don't have any sort of pivoting system. So depending on your design philosophy, a lot of people have tried pivoting systems in the front, and it has worked out well for them. However, there is a group of people out there who believe very strongly that stable front ends are the way to go. And the reason for that is speed. So cornering speed with a non-pivoting system like this. This is a pivoting system with these rubber bands here. This actually, around corners, could potentially be slower than this. Now, if you've got a stable, solid car, this is going to be a little faster. Now, proof of this is all of you have seen Neon Vicky and how fast it is compared to MS suspension cars. Neon Vicky has raced against very, very professionally designed MS suspension cars, and it ran head-to-head against them. It would lose in the end, but or course out. But given the fact that it was my very first open class car based on the VZ chassis, I was very proud of it because I had never built an open class car before Neon Vicky. And all I did was I took basically a Toon class car, changed the wheels so that it would have shaved wheels, shaved tires that is, and added my own body dampening system based on my car catcher body damper system. It's a unique design that I can't lay claim to it entirely because I've seen other people use something similar, but I've created so many body dampening systems using car catcher material that one can almost say that there is a Claire Din version of the car catcher body damper system. So yeah, you can see some of my designs right here. I've got this as a body dampening system. I've got other ones right here. Let's see, ooh, where is it? There was another one. Oh, right here. So yeah, so they're all different. They're all custom made depending on what the design of the chassis is. So it tries to morph itself around the shape of the chassis itself. So I will say that when you experiment making your open class cars, you make something, like I said before, Toon Class Plus is what I call it. So it's an open class car, but it's like Toon Class, but with additional things. So you can just get an idea of how much faster your car can get. So here I have things that are not quite Toon Class, right? Because it's open class. And so here I have here an FRP plate that I shaved off the bottom ends so I can get this a little bit closer to the wheels. And it's not very close to the wheels. Some of my cars get really close to the wheels. So you take a look at this, for example. Notice how the front pivoting system is very close to the wheels. Here it's not, and that's okay. I just want to show you what your very first open class car might be like. So front part there, and then bottom part, I have an underguard that is just a single plate here, and that also acts as a brake plate. And the underguard protects the screw here, this countersunk screw, so that if it does flip up and land on the edge of the track, it's going to easily slide back off. Now, I'm going to show you that right here, if you look very closely, it's actually angle shaved with a Dremel, so that it is more slippery when it comes off. So if you did not use a Dremel to shave off the edges like that, to basically taper the edges, then you'll get a kind of a click kind of thing when it comes off. You want it to be smooth, you don't want to click. So if you were to drop this right at the edge of the track, it would just slide off very smoothly. So other people might be a little more anal retentive about this and basically try to shave off, try to buff the entire bottom piece so that it is more of a matte finish rather than a slippery finish like this. But your mileage may vary on all of that, so just try to do something that's simple and easy to do so that you can get a taste of what open class is like. Now, with this beginning open class car, I'm just going to give you a caveat right now. You might not win a lot of races with it just because there's so much like awesome competition out there. Like a lot of people really have taken open class and made it something like their own, and so you're going to be racing against a lot of really experienced open class car racers. So just keep that in mind, and you know what? You might win a race or two every now and again. That's really cool. And the very fact that you can go head to head with some of them with your car, like if your car is just like trailing by like a car's length away from theirs, then you've done pretty well, especially since like a lot of people use MS suspension cars. If you can get your car to finish like basically right behind an MS suspension car, you're doing pretty well. So yeah, don't be sad if you don't win just because they have an MS suspension car and they spent like all this time and money and preparation for it. Like you're just learning how to create your very own open class car. So the bottom part has a brake plate in the front. It also has a brake plate in the back. And if you take a look at my Katana pivot video, it'll show you exactly how to build this little thing right here, this little pivoting system. It's not designed to pivot all the way. Like there are pivoting systems that basically snap back a lot. This one's just designed to cushion the blow. So when it hits the corner hard, there's that little momentary like shock absorption, and then it goes on its way. So very, very cool. This Katana pivot, one of the more awesome things I think, because it's like you can build this via like Toon Class. materials, right? So this is technically not an open class gimmick, but you can use it in open class because it's that versatile. So yeah, you see it's very simple on the rear, very simple in the front. I've got this basic front roller setup right here, configuration, where I've got a 13mm roller. Now, a lot of people might have issues with this, right? They might think that I shaved this down. No, these rollers here, they have so much racing experience that the paint wore off. So you can take a close look. They're not shaved down. They're just like, it's wear and tear from racing so much. If they were shaved down, you'd probably see a little bit more of a taper on the rollers. And here, you can start seeing the paint is starting to come off on the bottom one. So yeah, this is a 1213 green, and yeah, so pretty cool. And I've got a mushroom cap on top. So just in case this decides to like start flipping over on its side, the mushroom cap will bring it back in place. So yes, pretty cool. So on the bottom, let's see, is there anything else that we need to know about this? Oh, yes, when you're using shaved tires like this, it's important that you use a wheel press to get these in place. Now, you need bearings, 620 bearings. You need the washer caps. You need to press these wheels close, but not too tight. And you need to oil your bearings. Make sure you oil your bearings so that you get a nice smooth run. And here, what motor do I have in here? Do you think it's box stock? No, Sprint Dash. So Sprint Dash, with a chassis like this, will enable you to go head-to-head against a lot of MS suspension cars that are running Hyperdash or Mach Dash motors. So the thing that people love about MS suspension chassis is the suspension, right? So they build these wonderful suspensions where, like, look at this. This is like smooth like butter. This one's made by Precision Mini 4-wheel drive. Look at that. I'm pressing it up and it's smoothly going down. It's like butter. And then we have right here the wonderful Pro Tuners car, and that has a smooth suspension as well. Very, very nice. But we don't get to this point unless we start off with something like this. And I keep saying that again and again, but it's true. So in the beginning, you'll probably build something like this. And then you'll get to build something like this, which is basically a front pivoting system with the same similar kind of fixed static kind of rear system. And then, as you get better and better, you might think about changing your FMA chassis to have both a rear pivot and a front pivot. And yeah, then trying to figure out how to shave the bottom part here so that it can be more angular, so that when it hits an incline, it smoothly goes up rather than gives a clock or click type sound. So you want to try to make sure that this part here is angled versus stepped. So if you prefer the stepped approach, that's fine too. You just have to find the right brake pads for it. So then you get to a point where you build your own MS suspension open class cars. And here is mine here. And this one, I simply purchased the MS suspension chassis and I built around it. And the result is, as you see here, I've got my own car catcher pivoting system, which is like pretty good, not perfect, but it's pretty good. I like it. Like, it's not bad. And I've got this front pivoting system, what I call the DXN pivot. It's the AT front pumper. And here we have a very beautiful, beautiful body dampening system that, yes, as you see here, built myself. My cage here, built entirely by myself. And yeah, totally homemade car here, except for the chassis. Very, very cool. And it's fast, very fast. And then you get to more sophisticated designs, like for the front. So here I've got here a little pivot right here, and it's based on the Precision Mini 4-wheel drive system. So I can't take credit for this, but they built theirs on top of an MS suspension chassis. I built mine on top of a VZ chassis. So that's pretty cool. So whenever I see this going neck and neck against an MS suspension car, I'm pretty happy because this is not a suspension car. Very cool. So yes, to be able to mount the front plates onto this chassis here, what you want to do is you want to make sure that the top part of the chassis is shaved off. Now, an FMA chassis initially has these two arms, these wings that come out here. See the dark blue? And what I did was I basically cut them off, as you see here. And then I could mount the plates on top of that. So there you go. What you want to keep in mind is the top plate is at a downward angle. You don't want it to be parallel to the bottom plate. The bottom plate is to enable you to brake properly. So it could be horizontal plane. It could also be at a slight upward angle plane. So you have a choice on that. And there are different things and there are different angles for different purposes. But the top plate should always be angled down, downward angle. So as you see here, you can see very much so that this is angled downward, and you could actually change the angle of downward thrust by adding little components to this to try to change the angle. Maybe add another degree to it or two, and you can get a better down thrust. So always keep that in mind when you're building these cars. In the very beginning, when I was starting to build these cars, I just tried screwing the plates in as best I could, and sometimes I would run a screw from the bottom to the top, and then I'd notice that the top and the bottom plates would always be in line with one another. They'd be parallel, and that's not what you want to do. You want to make sure that the top plate is at a downward angle. Now the rear rollers, they should always be horizontal. See, these rollers here should always be horizontal to the ground, to the track. And this post here, should always be perpendicular to the ground. Very important. And you want to make sure that your car fits in this box right here, the regulation Tamiya box. So first I'm going to put the body damper back on here, and you can see how easy it is to replace this. It's just rubber pipes right here that I press down, and there we go. And I'm going to put this inside, and there it fits. And you want to have some movability inside the box. And also, the height should not exceed this part here, the top part of the box. Very important. And also, you want to lay this down on the box or on a flat surface and run your 1mm gauge underneath all parts of the car to make sure that you have at least a 1mm clearance. Clearly you can see that this has a 1mm clearance, and so yeah, it would pass inspection. The damper weights I have on here, we've got the dampers on the sides. We also have these very little tiny damper weights right here on the rear. Notice here I can put larger damper weights if I wanted to, but probably not much larger because we want to keep the weight down. 106 grams, very light car, going against some of these other cars here that are heavier. You know, like, they might have an advantage with suspension, but this one will have an advantage in terms of lightness. So yeah, lightness versus stability, I suppose it is. That's how I was able to win with my Neon Vicky car, a VZ chassis with a static front and a static rear body damper system made of car catcher material. And I would never win the top prize against certain racers. I would get silver or bronze. But one or two times or three times, I actually won gold with my crazy designs. I've got some crazy open class car designs because I'm always experimenting. The cool thing about open class is the fact that you put your personality into the car. So there are going to be different design philosophies. You could copy somebody else's existing design, and if it works for you, hallelujah to you. But here is where the fun starts. If you can create your own design and show other people that your design actually works, no matter how far-fetched it is, then I think that is more fun than copying somebody else's car and passing it off as your own. When you copy somebody else's car and pass it off as your own, and you win, it's like, yeah, that feels okay, but nothing ever feels as good as if you had invented the design yourself and won with that unique design. And then you're seen as like an awesome person. People will want to copy your design themselves and experiment with any new developments that you had put into your car. So this hobby is about not just like imitating other people and their successes, but it's also about innovation. Wouldn't you like to be at the forefront of innovation rather than someone who just is a copy of someone else? That's what it's all about, I think. So yeah, Mini 4-wheel drive unleashes your creativity. That's why it's so fun. If you don't have any creativity running these cars, then you have to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this just to win a trophy? You can buy a trophy for like under $10. But is it so that you can show that your designs can go head to head against some of the fastest cars out there? I think that is a better philosophy to try to do than to copy somebody else's cars. Very, very cool. So everybody, if you like this video, please slam the like button, subscribe to my channel, you'll see more videos just like this one. Until next time, everybody, see you, bye.